Well, good morning, everyone. And once again, welcome to another live this morning. Hope you're having a great start to your day. And we sure appreciate you guys coming on. And we'll say hello to a few dear friends here as you come on with us. Let's see here. Okay, who's going to be numero uno here? Andrea, you made it to the top. Elena, how are you? And Nativity, good morning to you. Sandy, Fergus Falls, Minnesota. Rosalinda, Niagara Falls. Madeleine, Kippawa, Quebec, bonjour. And let's see here. Elaine from St. John's, Newfoundland. Nice to have you on. Marilyn from PEI. Kevin from Oshawa. Nellie, good morning. Fran from Orangeville, good morning to you. Alice, how are you? Patty, Lynn from Aurora, and Linda from Chatham, Nick from our staff, Yalaun, bonjour, Wendy from Markham, and Joanne, how are you? Another Linda, St. Jude, Quebec. Danny and Carol, good morning. Nice to have you guys on. Georgie, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Dave, how are you? Wendy from London. Rita. And Cheryl, West Virginia. Gary, Bolton. Arlene, good morning. Lisa Marie, how are you? Carol, West Virginia. Beverly, Newfoundland. Lynn, Nouveau-Brunswick. Doreen, good morning. Australia. Dale, good morning. Sherry, Mississauga. Susan, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. Coast to Coast, and Teresa's in Dunedin, Florida. Maria, Oshawa. Diane, Thunder Bay. Maureen from Penticton, British Columbia. We love you guys. Denise, Chatham, Kent. And Linda. Brahim! Up in the clouds this morning. I didn't see you. Elaine and Arlene. I know I missed you, Brahim. Kerry, Nebraska. Thea, good morning. Patricia saying good morning to everyone. I'm assuming you met me too. Kathy. Catherine, Parksville, British Columbia. Darlene from Saskatchewan. Lorraine, we love you. Wendy. I missed a Wendy in the clouds. I didn't mean to. Suzanne, Edmonton. Sue, Manitoulin Island. Kelly, good morning. Vanda, PEI. Ornella, how are you? And Melika from Stouffville. Sharon, Kansas. Okay, a couple of more guys. Let's get going. Helga, Yvonne, Petawawa. Wanda, Virginia. John and April, how are you? Mara, Luella, Cecilia. Okay, that is, guys, thanks for coming on. Hi, Patricia is having her coffee. Well, I already had my coffee. And let's talk this morning, guys. I used to have a poster, okay? Let's see if I can find a picture of it. In my office. Now, you guys are going to see this not upside down, but sideways. This poster used to be in my office, okay? And what is it? Do you have insulin resistance? And then I had like a gauge in your car. And I had this made up. It was right in my office. Do you have insulin resistance? And it was a gauge, a car gauge. And it said this, check engine light. And Okay, so those are early possible warning signs of insulin resistance and strong indicators of insulin resistance. So I had that chart and people would gaze at it and gawk at it. And they often asked me questions about it because nobody had ever told them. Now you got to go back now, guys. I know you guys know a lot more about insulin resistance than my patients did. If you go back, 10 years or whatever, that poster was probably put up in, I'm going to say, well, I think just shortly after my son and I wrote the book, Serial Killers, 2 hormones that want you dead, insulin and estrogen. Okay? No, it was insulin and cortisol. Although too much estrogen will kill you too. Okay? Insulin and cortisol. Now, so that poster was up and I wanted people to think about insulin resistance. And one of the reasons is because this is a study that was done, I don't know. I'm going to say 10 years ago, maybe more than that. They took 200 patients and they followed them for 6 years. Now, I've talked to you about this before, but it's worth repeating because I just want to do a little bit of teaching on insulin resistance, okay? Now, they followed, for 6 years, they followed 200 patients and they measured insulin resistance. Okay? You can measure it. We'll talk about that in a minute. So they had 3 groups, 200 patients, and the people who had the worst insulin resistance. Okay? Now what would that be? And just, okay, strong indicators. A couple of these markers they had. High A1C, high triglycerides, high blood pressure, low HDL cholesterol, okay? Those are indicators. Now, there's a few more that I've added to that group, and we'll talk about that, but those are the things they measured. The ones, okay, 200 patients, the ones with the highest insulin resistance had the highest group of heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes. The ones with elevated A1C, elevated triglycerides, low HDL, it was amazing. Okay, now listen. Okay, the medium group, they had very little of the diseases, but they had some of them. Okay, this is after 6 years. The lowest group, the ones that had an A1C under 5.4, listen to this. Not one of those 200 got sick from a chronic disease. Not one of them got heart disease in 6 years. Not one of them got cancer. Not one of them got diabetes. Not one of them got Alzheimer's. Now, this study was done a long time ago, and it was buried. Believe you me, buried. Because today, you can barely get doctors to even talk about insulin resistance. They don't even, because you know why? I'll tell you why. The number one reason why. Because it goes against the narrative. It goes against the narrative. When you think heart disease, what does medicine think? What does medicine think? Cholesterol. Right? You think cancer? What do medicine think? Just generally. We don't know. Not food. Not the environment. Right? They don't look at that. So when you talk to them about insulin resistance, they'd have to study food. and they don't do it. So this, these things have fallen through the cracks because people, generally medicine, I know they're becoming more aware now, but, let's face it. They're not into they're into detection, but not prevention. So the people in the worst group of insulin resistance, guess what? They're the ones that got all the disease, chronic disease. The ones in the best of insulin resistance, meaning they had the lowest insulin resistance, guess what? They didn't get any diseases over 6 years. Okay? So, check engine light. Okay? And I'll post this after. I don't know how good the picture is, if you'll see it properly on the private Facebook group. Okay? This was a poster I put up in my office in, I can't remember exactly what year. I had it up there for many years. Okay? And people were fascinated by it. Check engine light. Hello? If you have any of these symptoms, I'm not saying it's only insulin resistance, but it's a check engine light. It's something that should be checked. Okay? Low energy. I got 16. And then I have 15 strong indicators. But in your car, if a light comes on, a check engine light, it could be a lot of things, right? I remember on my car one time, I didn't tighten the gas cap after gassing up, and my light went on. I didn't know what it was. And I brought it to the dealer, and they put a little machine on it. I said, you just didn't tighten your gas, but it could be your transmission. It could be your leaking fluid. It could be a lot of things. Okay, so check engine light goes on. You got low energy. Now that can be a lot of things, but you got to look at insulin resistance. Okay, weight gain could possibly be insulin resistance and other things. Poor sleep. We talked about sleep apnea, right? I mean, that's a condition, but a lot of people get poor sleep, and that can be cortisol too. But remember, two hormones that want you dead: insulin and cortisol. Okay, digestive issues. I've seen a lot of digestive issues fixed after people do the reset and get their insulin down. Vertigo. Now look, it could be a virus, but again, I've seen it, and this is on check the engine light for insulin resistance. Overactive bladder. Amazing, right? Overactive bladder. Tinnitus. Joint pain. Skin tags. You got skin tags? You got insulin resistance. Cataracts. We talked about the eyes. There's nothing that destroys eyes more than sugar. Okay? Nothing that'll destroy your eyes more than sugar. They glycate those blood vessels. They damage the blood vessels. And your eyeballs are all about blood vessels. It's blood supply. Same thing with your kidneys. It's blood supply. Well, even your brain, blood supply. Cataracts, leg cramps, weak immune system, carpal tunnel. Wow, how do you like that? Achilles tendon pain, chronic tendonitis, any itis, I used to tell patients. You got insulin. Well, I used to measure it, so I didn't have to guess. Okay? They had insulin resistance almost invariably. Okay? The 16th One I just mentioned, acne. Acne. Especially adult acne. No. And women get adult acne, they get too much estrogen, too much testosterone, and that comes from estrogen, not enough progesterone, and insulin resistance. Okay? And, okay. Now, let me just go over strong indicators. Okay, so the other ones were check the engine light. It could be that. Insulin resistance. Might be something else, or maybe a combination of things. That's why, guys, the reset is so good. The reset is so good because you're really hitting a major pathway. When you lower your insulin resistance, you're lowering your inflammation. Fixing insulin is a huge factor. Okay, now strong indicators. Now that's very strong. Okay, and some of this, obviously, you guys know this because we talk about it all the time. What are strong indicators that you have insulin resistance? You're metabolic syndrome. 93% of the population have this. What is that? Obesity? Strong indicator. Belly fat? Strong indicator. Okay? High blood pressure? Strong indicator. High triglycerides, fat balls? Strong indicator. Low HDL, strong indicator. Okay? Inflammation, yeah, strong indicator. We talked about that. Fatty liver, big time strong indicator. It's the number one reason for fatty liver. And xanthosis. I love these big words. Those are brown spots, okay? Usually under the armpits, around the neck, like large brown spots, even on the legs, okay? And xanthosis. Why don't they just call it large brown spots? Hair loss. Well, that can be a lot of things too. Sarcopenia. Amazing. And I used to see this in my office all the time. Okay? People that weren't very big, it was the opposite of obesity, but they still had major insulin resistance, and they were sarcopenic. They had no storage spaces for glucose. When you build muscle, guys, okay? When you build muscle, those are bins. They're storage bins. And, the more we study muscle, I've been saying this for such a long time, the more we study muscle, what I knew in the 1970s about muscle and what I know today as far as metabolic syndrome, as far as it's like you have an extra endocrine organ that's on your side. If you have muscle, you have storage space, more storage. It takes a huge amount of pressure off your pancreas. It takes a huge amount of storage space away from your liver. Why do you think we see so much pancreatic cancer today? Why do we see so much liver cancer today? Okay? Fatty liver, sarcopenia, osteoporosis, Dowinger's hump. Do you know what a Dowinger's hump is? You go to T1, right in the back, just at the base of your neck, and you see people, and they got a hump there. Okay? Right at that T1 level. And just at the base of their neck, you can see it. That is a hugely strong indicator they have big time trouble with insulin resistance. ED, erectile dysfunction. That is one of the first signs in men that they have. You see, it comes to circulation again, right? And it's not a lack of Cialis. It's insulin. It's a problem with circulation, microcirculation. It's the same thing with the prostate, BPH. Get insulin down. Why? Because insulin is a growth hormone. You combine in men insulin, growth hormone, estrogen, growth hormone in men, and the prostate grows. And the blood supply to their privates is diminished. Erectile dysfunction. You know? And so these are important. Okay? These are important symptoms. You know, like you can, take a pill. You got ED, man. Take a pill. No, fix your problem. Why do you have that? Hormonal imbalance. Yeah, any hormonal, even the thyroid. The thyroid is so finicky. And it really is affected by the pancreas, big time. The liver, big time. It's hormones, anyway. Gout, insulin resistance, high levels of uric acid, psoriasis, leaky gut, plus insulin, psoriasis. Memory problems. Yeah, big time. Okay? Your memory. Remember, blood supply, eyes, kidneys, brain, heart, blood supply. Sugar is toxic to those areas. Remember, Alzheimer's, type 3 diabetes. The brain is swimming in glucose that it can't use. Okay? PCOS, polycystic ovarian disorder. You know, a lot of women, when they got polycystic ovarian disorder, they were put on metformin, a diabetic drug. Yeah, that was one of the treatments. Okay? And because, one thing medicine will agree. Yeah, insulin. But they never talk to you about, well, food. You better lower your carbohydrates. You better lower your sugars. No, just take metformin. Well, come on. You're not getting at the root issue. It's food. So those are strong indicators. Okay, so let's just go into a little bit of detail again. What blood test? And guys, Sun, Steak, and Steel, the book. I have a chapter in there on blood tests that you need. And guys, it's like, the commercials in the United States for drugs. Ask your doctor if this medication is good for me. And then for the next 15 minutes, they tell you about all the side effects of that drug. Those they must work, okay? But they don't work on me. Because soon as I hear all the side effects, including death, I was listening to one the other day, okay? It was on an autoimmune disease drug. And they said, man, oh man, ask your doctor if this drug is good for me. And then for the next, it seemed like 5 minutes, but it couldn't have been. They gave you the side effects, and one of them Tell your doctor if you're dying. No, it literally said, this medication can cause death. Why would you ask your doctor for it? Anyway, guys, you know I'm being facetious a little bit, okay? But I get a chuckle out of it. Anyway, okay? Why did I tell you about that? Because I want you to ask your doctor to get these blood tests done. Okay? Now, your doctor won't flag a lot of these things, but if you can get the results of your test and compare them to the ranges that I put in my book, Sun, Steak, and Steel, you'll know where you stand with insulin resistance and a lot of other things too. But generally, I'm so focused in on insulin. Okay? I'm so focused in on insulin. So you want to know? Well, doc, I want you to do my A1C. 1. Okay. You're going to do a lipid profile. And your doctor's going to be consumed with cholesterol. I don't want you to be consumed with cholesterol. I want you to be consumed with your triglycerides. So you go, you get your own results, and you look, what are my triglycerides? And you want your, because I was saying this the other day on Q&A. Because I think it was Cecilia, I can't remember. I think so. And she was saying, well, doc, how do I elevate my HDL? Well, compared to what? Okay? I need two numbers. I need your triglycerides and I need your HDL. You need to compare those two numbers. Because your triglycerides should always be lower than your HDL. And your HDL, you want it at minimum to be at least as high as your triglycerides, but preferably even up to 2.5 times higher than your triglycerides. What are triglycerides? Fat balls. When you take those two numbers, triglycerides and HDL, you can tell on whether you have insulin resistance or not. If your triglycerides are high and your HDL is lower than that, you got insulin resistance. You can go to the bank with it. Okay? You can go to the bank with it. Okay. So, you want your A1C, you want your triglycerides and your HDL. Okay, they usually do that, but don't ask, you don't get it. Okay? And you'll get a pile of numbers come back with your lipids. Okay? And people say, doc, well, my LDL was this, what does that mean? What does my total cholesterol mean? Well, they don't mean nothing to me. Okay? If you have low LDL, here's what I know. You're going to die young. I just don't know why you want to get it low. I know why doctors want to get it low. Because they since 1987, since the creation of statin drugs, I've watched it happen. It's been, let's lower LDL. LDL, LDL, LDL. And they made cholesterol the boogeyman. Well, I don't do that. I've never been convinced of that. And, hey, you want to show me studies? I've looked at all of them thus far. And they're not impressive in terms of, have we eradicated heart disease? Not even an inch. Heart disease is worse than ever. Strokes are worse than ever. It ain't cholesterol. Anyway, okay, so you get your A1C done. You get your triglycerides done. You get your HDL done. Here's a few more that you should look at. Get your CRP done. If you don't ask, you ain't going to get it. Get your C-reactive protein done. And I talk about that in the book. Okay? Get your vitamin D levels done. What? What's vitamin D? What's the sun got to do with insulin? Has a lot to do with insulin. And it's because if your vitamin D is low, you have insulin resistance. It's one that I put in there, by the way. You won't see this anywhere else, generally. But it just, for all my years in practice, I saw it. People that had low levels of vitamin D had insulin resistance. That's why I added it to the group. If you have low levels of B12, you have insulin resistance. Get your B12 checked. And guess what, guys? It's not whether your vitamin D or your B12 are within normal limits. Remember, vitamin D levels. Oh, doc, mine are normal. Well, you don't want to be normal. Do you want to be normal? You want to be optimal. Oh, my B12 is normal. Yeah, but that's a mouse. You're not a mouse. You have to have optimized B12 for your metabolism to work properly, for your insulin to work properly, vitamin D for your insulin to work properly. You need optimized levels of vitamin D. And I put the numbers in there for you. If you live in the United States, I give you American numbers. If you live in Canada, I give you Canadian numbers. So that you can look. Okay? Those are tests you want to get done. I like looking at ferritin. Because if you have hemochromatosis, like high levels of iron in your blood, you know what? Probably have insulin resistance and fatty liver. Of course, if you have elevated liver enzymes, yeah. But if you don't ask, a lot of times on the doctors, they're busy. They're not thinking of metabolic syndrome. And they'll sometimes, why are you asking me for these blood tests? Doc, just trust me. I want to know what these numbers are. See, physicians are not used to people questioning them. You came into my office, okay? My dad used to tell me, patients have inside information. You ask them questions, okay? You want to get to the bottom of stuff? Ask them questions. Good idea. And you know what I did with my patients? Do you have any questions? Now, sometimes they're in the office and, you know, like they never got a chance to ask me all the questions they want to ask me. I gave them a report. They could go home and read it. And I filled out, I spent a lot of time giving biomarker reports, but I had all the information. This is what this means. This is what this means. This is what A1C means. If you have elevated A1C, this is what it means. But if you have questions, ask questions. I wanted you to ask me questions. I wanted you to be educated. I wanted you to not just take a doctor's word for it. But doctors are not used to that. I remember my daughter is a nurse, and one of my daughters is a nurse, and she works in a walk-in clinic. At least she was, and at the time she still does. By the way, works with her husband, who's a physician. Anyway, and at one of these walk-in clinics, okay, in my hometown, there was literally a sign on the wall from the physician to the patient, okay? So before you got in there with the doctor, there was a sign on the wall. You know what it said? You're only allowed one question. Don't ask two, ask one. Like, what? You know what I used to do? I used to tell my patients, write your questions down. Okay? You're coming in for your second visit, a follow-up. Write your questions down. And when I answer them, check them off. Check them off. Do you like that? Isn't that the way it should be? I have a lot of questions. I'm not sure what this means. What does it mean? Okay. And look, it's not like I had 2 hours with every patient. It's, I streamlined everything. But then I was an open book. You could ask me questions. And I wanted that. I wanted to be questioned. Because I wanted my patients to understand. Especially about insulin resistance. And what to do about it. And how to fix it. I couldn't go home with them. I gave them a plan, and I always gave a plan to succeed. I didn't give a plan that they couldn't do. I said, look, here's what you got to do, man. And anywho, okay. So that was, I'll post this, okay? I'll post it up there. I don't know if how it will look online, because it's an old picture. But anywho, okay. So send in your questions already. You got questions? Send them in. Q&A Friday, okay? We'll take care of your questions. Okay, guys, we love you. Talk to you soon.